I'm going to start by quoting some Shakespeare. To rent or to buy? That is the question. Okay, it was a riff, I know, but it is a big, big question that people ask themselves when it comes to finding a place to live, sometimes when it comes to a car. Turns out in this day and age, renting is something that is a possibility in so many more categories than ever before. So, how do you think through whether the rental choice is right for you based on the circumstance? Our guest is Carolyn McClanahan. She is a certified financial planner and founder of Life Planning Partners, and she joins us today from Jacksonville, Florida, to talk about this question. Hello there.
Well, hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
Technology has changed so many parts of our lives. It seems that tech has been a big enabler to this part of the conversation because you can find someone who wants to rent a prom dress, whereas before that might have been impossible. How would you
Mhm.
characterize the rental economy in this day and age?
Well, to me, it's a beautiful thing that we have such connections through the internet and so many different services where you can find something that you may only wear once and you can rent it now instead of having to put out that big money to buy it and never again have to wear it. So it's a beautiful thing to tools, equipment, whatever you need, you can rent now.
There is the math and the mindset about
Mhm.
renting, and they're two connected but distinct things. Let's start on the math first. In Canada, at least, there's a real bias towards owning a home, as an example. There's a
Mhm.
bias to owning a lot of different things. What do you think are some of the myths or pitfalls that people run into when they think about the financial stuff that has them buy more often than rent, or buy when they should probably just rent?
Well, a big thing is, you're going to build equity in your home, which is true. But for the most part, a home is a use asset. It's not something that you're going to buy and sell. And it can be a nice safety net when you're old, but sometimes bad things happen. Like your home can burn up in a fire and insurance
Mm.
doesn't pay back everything, or that you need to move and you have to sell in uncertain times when it's hard to sell. So people think they're always going to make money on real estate, and you don't always make money on real estate.
What are some of the, you referenced some of the other categories like tools or the prom dress, which I joked about. How does one think through the math of those sorts of purchases?
Well, it's important to think about how you're going to use something and what the cost of the use of that object is. I like to use a good example of cars. People back, especially until cars became a lot more reliable, they would buy new cars every 3, 4 years. And you still have some people that love to have that new car. And in reality, a car is just an expensive object to own. And if you have to buy a new one all the time, you're wasting a lot of money. And one thing that people can do is you can hold on to a car for a very long time. And if you feel like it's not safe to drive long distances, you can rent a car to go on trips. And it
Right.
saves you a heck of a lot more money than buying a new car just because you want something reliable for the long haul on the road. When if you don't drive that much other than trips, it's better to rent a car.
Right. So that's the kind of the math side of the equation. The
Mm-hmm.
mindset part, we see this, there's a lot of cultural bias. Some countries, everybody rented their homes. So when they moved to Canada, it's like not a big deal to rent. And other countries in which owning is the thing. Like you need to put, you don't buy stocks, you buy real estate. What are some things that people need to be aware of in times of a bias in their mindset?
Well, most people don't think about the carrying cost of actually owning something. So when you own a house or whatever, then you have to have a place to. So for objects, you have to have a place to store them. With a house, you have to pay all the things like the property taxes, the upkeep, and when you need a new roof, a new air conditioner. And when you're renting, the person that you're renting from takes care of all that. With objects, it's, another one is boats that people love to buy. And that the happiest day of a boat owner's life is the day they buy it and the day they sell it. And
Right.
And now, I mean, because the carrying cost, storing a boat, the upkeep for a boat, when now there are great boat clubs that you can rent a boat 12 times a year. And that's probably how much most people use their boats anyway. And it's a heck of a lot less expensive, but people just like that thought of this is mine. And they don't think about what goes behind that.
You're a CFP. You work with
Right.
real humans who are trying to navigate both the math and the mindset. How do
Yeah.
you engage with them as you, I don't know how deeply you go into cash flow, but how do you engage with them on this question to test their assumptions and push their boundaries about some of the choices that they're making that may be a hit to their financial well-being, like the boat, for example?
Right. And we go very deep into cash flow. To me, the most important job a financial planner does is to make sure that clients understand how they spend their money and whether how they spend their money is truly bringing value to their life. And so we go through everything that a client's spending. And if a client has plenty of money and they don't have to worry, it's like we still bring to their attention if the world falls apart or you don't have as much money in the future or you lose your job, what could you come back? What could you cut back? And I break it down into needed spending and thoughtless spending.
Right.
And so helping people pair that out. And so, that there's been plenty of studies on this that experience brings more pleasure than things. And so when we see clients that are spending money on experience, that brings me a lot of joy because they're having probably a happier life as opposed to people who concentrate on accumulating things.
Mm.
And so when they're accumulating things, we show them the cost of those things. And if they have plenty of money and want to own two homes, the other thing what my specialty is actually helping people think through planning for aging. When you're old and you have all that stuff, and who's going to take care of your stuff? Who's going to help you get rid of it? Your kids don't want it. And it's going to be a continued ongoing cost, especially if you own property in different states and you have to worry about estate planning. It gets crazy. So trying to help people simplify when things aren't bringing joy and
Mm.
value to their life, to me, is an important job of that I do.
100%. There is one, I don't know, pitfall that I weave into our conversation here around renting, and that is that sometimes we become oblivious to the costs of things that we are renting. And I'll give you a
Mhm.
common example here is the storage locker, which to your point
Oh,
about
yeah.
stuff is a whole other thing. But we
Yep.
talk about the subscriptions that we're renting the privilege of Spotify, we're renting the privilege of Netflix, and those numbers can add up over time. How do you force a reset for people to say, okay, stop it. You're renting all of these things. Which ones do you love? The ones that you love, you should rent until the day you die. But the ones that you no longer love, you need to stop renting those things.
Oh yeah, and we just had a client that we did a cash flow analysis of. They're spending 12,000 a year on subscriptions like Spotify, Pandora, multiple subscriptions to everything, reading. And I said, how do you have all this time to listen to these 20 something odd subscriptions and read all these subscriptions? And he goes, yeah, you're right. I'm hardly touching most of them. And
Right.
so he's doing an intense pairing right now. And I think the ones that he actually really liked, he's going to end up going down to about 2,000 a year, which is still to
Wow.
me, but from where he started, and the guy has plenty of money. He's very fortunate that way. But why waste it on things you're not
Yeah.
using?
Yeah. Yeah. Just before we go here, is there a category for you that you see people rent in, but for you yourself, you're like, I couldn't do that. I'm not willing to do that. I'm not able to do that. Do you have one that just pushes the principle of renting one too far?
Well, for me, it's definitely owning my own home.
Yeah.
I love where I live. I love my neighborhood. I love doing things to my home. And if I was renting, I can't make it my own. So that's the nice thing about owning a home. And so that's an obvious one. The other thing is I like having a car that I hold for a long period of time. And so I have to own a good car that I know is going to be reliable because I don't want to break down on the side of the road.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
are my two things, but there's nothing else that I feel like I need to own. Nothing, no
Sure.
new
I
other
love your
homes and things
suggestion. I
like
love
that.
your suggestion about renting a car for distance travel, because I also have a
Yes.
car that I'm going to drive into the ground. And it's one thing to break down in the city where you can call a
Yep.
tow truck and, probably take an Uber home. It's another thing to be doing that thousands of kilometers away. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your insight, Carolyn. This is a really great conversation.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Carolyn McClanahan is a certified financial planner. Her firm is Life Planning Partners, and she was here to talk about the rental economy and how we untease in our mind the difference between the math of our buy versus rent decisions and the mindset of our buy versus rent decisions.